An acolyte kills the dream.
Kill your dream today with Headland Nails. 9 inches of social justice fanfiction that will nail the coffin closed on any career. Guaranteed. But wait, there's more. Call now and we'll throw in a digital copy of The Acolyte for free. That's right, absolutely free. Call Lucasfilm now on 415-623-1962. That's 415-623-1962. It's no secret that The Acolyte was both a financial and critical failure for Disney Star Wars and Lucasfilm. The eye-watering budget alone meant that the show had a pretty steep hill to climb in terms of getting a season 2. So when it arrived to mixed reviews...
Tell the truth!
Fine, when it was dead on arrival, I'm sure there were some pretty frank conversations that took place behind closed doors. First of which would have been pausing the green light on season 2, ending the money vacuum that was the High Republic, and politely telling Headland to take her social justice warrior fanfiction elsewhere. And the second, beginning conversations with Kathy Kennedy about her successorship. While I cannot confirm this, as Lucasfilm refused to answer my emails, we'll call it an educated guess based on Kennedy's responses in the Deadline exit interview article, where she casually forgets to mention the Acolyte, but does say that discussions about her exit plan commenced circa 2024. So, if one were to go a little bit galaxy brain and extrapolate on the things unsaid, it might look something like this. As a self-appointed champion of women in film, there is no doubt in my mind that Kennedy believed wholeheartedly in Headland and her ideas. The Acolyte was, in a lot of ways, the culmination of Kennedy's aspirations as the head of Lucasfilm. A Star Wars story that was a female-centric tale of empowerment against toxic masculinity, that sought to redefine Lucas's notions of good and evil with moral relativism, the Jedi and Sith as twisted inversions of their core archetypes, and alter the very foundation of the galaxy far, far away. The Acolyte was greenlit in 2019, at the beginning of the rapid rise of social justice ideologue entertainment, and at a time when Disney Star Wars pivoted to streaming following the spectacular crash and burn of The Rise of Skywalker in cinemas.
How dare you stand where he stood?
Fortunately for us all, it failed despite having more lightsabers than a Star Wars theory warehouse, revealing that Kennedy's writer of choice, whom she'd promised investors would make them lots and lots of money, was little more than an untalented DEI hire that used to write fan fiction to escape her problems. While other Star Wars shows came and went on Disney+, it is clear that the primary investments by Disney were being made in The Acolyte and Andor, with estimated budgets of roughly $230 million for 8 episodes for the former, and $650 million for 24 episodes for the latter.
I don't presume to. But you do. Revealed your opinion is.
Despite Andor having a higher overall budget per season, the efficiency of its production ultimately meant that its overall cost per minute of film was less than The Acolyte's, which, for those of you playing at home, is a very important metric in terms of streaming time. More minutes means more content means more potential views. The cheaper the minutes, the greater the potential profit from those views. And for you cinephiles out there, I say film figuratively. I know both productions were shot digitally, and I appreciate the distinction between the mediums.
So don't bother pointing that out.
It's also worth mentioning that one show looks like it could comfortably sit on the silver screen, and the other very much looks like a TV show. But I'll let you figure out which is which. But here is the blue elephant in the numbers that was not discussed by Disney nor the access media: the marketing. We will never know the true cost of the publicity drive behind both productions, but cast your mind back to 2024. The Acolyte was everywhere. On buses, posters, ads, and even in toilets. The advertising for Andor in 2022? Now, I'm no financial guru, as many of you have been keen to point out, but I'd bet my sunken chest of Spanish doubloons that The Acolyte, given how closely it appealed to Kennedy's personal sociopolitical aspirations, received the lion's share of the marketing budget in 2024, making its commercial failure all the more painful for Lucasfilm. While Andor didn't break records or achieve huge streaming numbers, its critical acclaim and positive word of mouth paints it as the clear winner of the two productions. But because it wasn't particularly profitable, I doubt it had much sway with the conversation occurring between Disney's board and Kennedy. Going back to the start, Kennedy's female-centric agenda for Star Wars seems to be the only overarching direction she had for the franchise. Not the story, just who was the lead, the focus on screen, or whomever she could sponsor behind the scenes, regardless of filmmaking talent. As I've said before, this wouldn't have been a problem if everything was to the same standard as Andor, but unfortunately for us all, that is not the case. And in that, she sowed the destruction of Star Wars and her reputation as a great producer. taking a no-fail franchise from the height of its power to little more than a streaming sideshow of subpar quality and schizophrenic storytelling. It's almost like Star Wars was a lifelong project of one man who built an entire company around himself in order to tell that story. And without him, it is a ship without a captain, whose first mate was happy to let anyone into the wheelhouse to spin the helm like it was an episode of Wheel of Fortune. And while her career before she took over at Lucasfilm was paved with success, it should be clear now that that success was tied to filmmakers like Lucas and Spielberg, and without them she is little more than an untalented bean counter.
Because there were a lot of companies that were in place who, frankly, didn't initially feel that Star Wars was for girls. And when you have a company situation where between Lucasfilm and Disney, we were all looking at this situation and saying, no, with Star Wars, we have to change this. We have to make sure that we create products that are, in a sense, appealing to both boys and girls. What's wrong with that?
I'll show you.
Because of this vision of a female future for the franchise, she lost sight of, or more likely never understood, the significance of the past and its importance to the pre-existing, majority male audience that had cultivated Star Wars for the last 40 years, blind to the egocentric idiocy of the writers and directors that she hired.
And without great writing, we have nothing to produce.
Without a strong and clear creative direction of her own based on George Lucas's story treatments, she allowed J.J. Abrams to pivot away from Lucas's vision, which set the foundation for the underuse and abuse of our legacy heroes that would ultimately lead to the ruination of our last modern fairy tale. Regardless of her intentions, which I don't actually believe were nefarious from a creative perspective, she was definitely the one that failed to protect Lucas's plans, which was the reason George put her in the job in the first place. One job, Kennedy, one job. But make no mistake, the Acolyte was Kennedy's final vision for Star Wars, a marker of everything that she wanted, and in her Muppet brain it would have sat proudly at the start of the Star Wars timeline, and in this jellyfish's assessment, alongside Andor, was likely intended to have been the triumphant swan song duet of her retirement, one that realised her own personal aspirations, and one that farmed praise and accolades from the Academy. It's just a shame about all those damn sexist, racist fans, huh, Kathy? If only that toxic minority stayed away from their keyboards and didn't review bomb the show. Then it would have been the success that she promised, I'm sure. Wow, that's quite the minority. As it stands, though, the Acolyte is the 9-inch nail in the coffins of Leslie Headland and Amanda Sternberg's careers, as well as Kennedy's time as president. A monument of failure that should remind fans of the cost of poor creative leadership, corporate cowardice, and personal socio-political bias at the expense of story substance. At the end of the day, Disney is an entertainment company, not a soapbox, and whomever comes next would do well to remember that. So if there's one good thing I can say about it, it's that the Acolyte killed Kennedy's dream, and that seems like karma to me. Well, what are your thoughts, Skipper? Was the Acolyte the final nail in Kennedy's coffin? Or was she already halfway out the door following the rise of Skywalker? Would you like to see me take a swing at J.J. Abrams next, given that he's managed to avoid my Eye of Sauron thus far? Let me know in the comments. But allow me to leave you with some brainless wisdom for your consideration. It is not so much the ship as the skillful sailing that assures a prosperous voyage. Take from that what you will. Hooroo, mate.